Hindsight is a very peculiar thing. You can think something about a toy at the time, but then have a completely different opinion later down the line. However, I don't think this was a case of hindsight. My original copy of this figure was very flawed. The hips would constantly fall apart, and eventually it just broke entirely. I actually threw that old toy away, but then when I went over to a Transformers collector's place to clear out his house, he was giving away a bunch of free toys, I saw another copy of this, and I noticed it was a lot more sturdy. So I thought, why not give this another chance? And I'm glad I did, because he's actually quite fun. Springer is somewhat of an enigma, in the sense that he never appeared in the film, never had a larger toy, and he's just sort of, well, here. The Legends size class from the movies is very peculiar in the sense that it was mostly complete. Aside from a few guys here and there, it covered all the bases. Most of the characters were represented at that size class, so they ended up having to pad it out with some figures like these. That's a rarity. Nowadays you're often clamoring for third party to fill in the gaps of a collection, and personally I'm not the kind that likes to get a complete set. I don't like to fill in the gaps, I just buy whatever's fun, but, you know, that definitely does bring up the confusion behind this guy. The other bit of confusion is he was never in any concept art or anything of the such. He was just made for the Legends class scale, based on his G1 counterpart to a degree. Kinda. I mean, he's a green helicopter who's called Springer. Well, how more G1 can you get than that? I really like the colours that they have here, but it doesn't show up very well on camera. It seems a lot more grey on camera when it's a lot richer in person. I'll see if I can get some colour correction going on to see if it can mimic what it's like in real life, but it doesn't really work. I'm also not sure if this pops up well on camera, but he has 5PRIN63G, or N63R. Yeah, R. It's a bit hard to read it even here, and I don't think it pops up on camera either, but those numbers spell Springer. It's a rather funny callback. He doesn't clean up the best. I mean, you've got visible head syndrome and the feet clearly visible back there, but it's a pretty cool helicopter. My only main gripe with it is that these things don't really lock into place. They're supposed to. They're supposed to get to a certain point where it just sticks in there, but they kind of just flop around, and it's not really cool. And then these hands also flop around. It is a very cool way of transforming, though. He also uses his mass quite well to create the illusion of size. He looks a lot bigger than he does because it's all stretched out into the awesome jet mode. First thing you want to do is bring the arms up. You can bring these out to the side, but they'll pretty much just fall down there naturally. You undo the pegs here, come to the bottom, bring out the feet. You can stand them up. This whole section flops down. The belly folds down as well, and the hands do that. And you have a pretty cool robot mode that when I was a kid I didn't give enough credit for it because, well, my copy was kind of shit. See, the hips were way too loose on my version and he couldn't stand, and I wrote it off as a terrible toy and never used it again. But when I got a second copy for free, this guy is pretty awesome. The way they use the feet is genius. The propellers on the arms, it's pretty damn good. It cleans up immaculately. The design of the propellers on the arms as weapons is pretty brilliant, combined with the spinning action. It doesn't work so well in this mode, but it works better in vehicle mode. The way that the chest folds down is pretty brilliant. It can still be a pain to stand, but overall it's not terrible. Now, my original copy was terrible because it actually had QC issues in where the hips were way too loose. But now, it stands perfectly, it works perfectly, it's pretty good. But unfortunately, many people won't buy him because they're out for completionism and he's just not on the list. And I have said that a lot of people don't want him simply because of the fact that he doesn't triple change. And I'm like, really? It's a $7 Legends toy, $10 by today's standards. You really want it to triple change? And that's not to say that Legends triple changes can't work. We have had two on the market, actually. But then again, these are third-party figures. How much budget goes into these compared to into this? But still, Hasbro has made technically triple changes if you count combiners, and if you count those Micromaster things that they're doing now where they turn into guns, they're kind of triple changes. But still, this guy doesn't need to be a triple changer. He does his own thing and he sticks to it. It's just like the case with Studio Series Dropkick, which I reviewed about a week ago. It's a solid copter former and it does its thing. And I suppose in the end, the final size comparison, because of course you gotta. In the end, he's a pretty brilliant toy. When this guy can stand up and display proudly on a shelf, he is a very good toy. I wouldn't say he's a perfect toy, but he's a lot of fun, and if you're collecting legends from the movieverse or just legends in general, he's a good toy to have on the shelf. He comes reasonably cheap nowadays, and although aside from being green and being a helicopter, it doesn't share much in common with the G1 Springer, he's a ton of fun. I wouldn't rush out to buy him, but if you see him, definitely pick him up. But we're continuing with green tomorrow, this time with a full review, because when it comes to a combiner, you really need to go all out. Does this figure go all out? Well, I mean, he is better than the Supreme version, so it can't be that bad.